Okay, everybody, how's it going? We're going to do a little exercise here called sharpening like a boss. While this lady trombone player is playing the crap out of that trombone in the background, I'm watching YouTube, the WDR Big Band. But anyway, we shall forge forward here. I'm going to pick out a nice image to do a little sharpening on, something that's got a little contrast in between the sky and the horizon line. So you can see what sharpening looks like. Something from a recent field trip up to the Hondo Valley. Okay, almost there. There we go. Okay, now we're in camera raw. Remember, in camera raw, I apply lens corrections usually. I don't do too much else. Chromatic aberration. Who wants aberrations? Enable profile corrections, and if it's stored in the Photoshop database, it'll pick it out already. It did. It picked out the 50 millimeter 1.8 G lens that I used to take the picture. So yay! So down here, correction amount. 100% means it's going to correct all the flaws that that lens has. So it'll correct for vignetting, which is where it gets darker toward the edges, and distortion, which all lenses have to one degree or another. So that's good. Excuse me, I still have allergies. So we did that correction. Now we're going to open it in Photoshop. And there we go, a lovely highway scene. Oops, I don't want that one. That's my old picture. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now here we go. I'm going to render this. Actually, I'm going to stick this with this as color. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to show you full correction on this. First, I'm going to correct for color balance because it was kind of an overcast, rainy day, and it's a little blue there. So I'm going to go into adjustments, over to color balance, which is kind of a global way to approach correction color balance. And all I'm going to do is add a little bit of red to it, just a little bit, and I'm going to add a little yellow to it. That will get you pretty close to neutral, right about there. There we go. Most of that blue's gone. There's still a little bit down here, but that's okay. So now, anyway, I want to take this and I want to do some sharpening to it, right? So sharpening is what you do after you have made the image the size you want to make it. So, right? So you go down here to image size. I'm going to make, oh, let's see, an 11 by 14 or thereabouts. So I'll make the width 14 inches. With this capture chip on my Nikon D610, we get to a 14 by 13.387. Okay, so we've got our image size set. Oop, edit. Let me try that again. Tie those together? Those were tied together. Okay, now it's locked together. If you don't have these two locked together, width and height, that's a little lock there on the side. Then when you change the size on the other size won't change in proportion. So that messed that up. So let's do 14 inches wide by 9.36 inches at 300 pixels per inch. That's good. Resample, since we're shrinking it down, we can do that. Do bicubic sharper for reduction. Blink. Okay, there we go. Now view will fit it on the screen. And there we go. Okay, so now we want to make that transition between the landscape and the sky nice and crisp there to keep the detail in it. And remember though, this one big pointer when you took the picture is when you did the sharpening. So Photoshop is just giving you artificial sharpening. It's applying a little white line around all the contrast edges in your image. That makes your brain think it's sharper. It's not sharper. That's the secret. Sharpening happened when you took the picture. So if you weren't in focus and using a fast enough shutter speed to freeze any motion and a good aperture to make sure it was sharp all the way across the frame, then you don't have sharp. Okay, here we go. So filter, remember I told you two suck and two are pretty good. and one is the way the pros do it, or the boss, as we like to say. Sharpen. Okay, so you've got shake reduction under sharpen here, and that actually helps a little bit if you've got a picture where your hand is moved a little bit and you see a little tiny bit of motion there. It'll correct maybe 10%, not a lot, but it does help. Sharpen is just their general sharpening algorithm. It's kind of mediocre. It just kind of takes a best guess. And whenever you take a best guess in Photoshop, or you let it take a best guess, it's almost always off. So sharpen edges a little bit better. All it's going to do is pick out the contrast edges in your picture and apply sharpening to it. So let's here. Let me do this. I'm going to blow this up to 100%. Okay, then I'm going to divide it into two different pictures. Okay, so now we've got a picture on the right-hand side and a picture on the left-hand side. And I'm going to apply this sharpening to the picture on the right-hand side, and we'll give that a try. Filter, down to sharpen, down to sharpen edges. Okay, it's already done it. Now we're going to take it view up to 100%. Okay, we're at 100%. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so now layer, I'm going to separate this layer so we can see a little bit better. Layer style, there we go. There we go. Now we can see where the two layers are. So the one on the right is the one I applied sharpening to. The one on the left has no sharpening, okay? So now as you can see, the one on the right does look sharper, right? You can see, pretty big jump off in the detail between the white sky and the background. Look on the left-hand side there, and you see less, right? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put this right in the center so we can see it better. There we go. So you see on the right is the automatic sharpening algorithm. Not too bad. On the left is no sharpening. So you definitely see a difference there. So I'm going to go to Edit. Make sure I'm on that layer. Which layer am I on? That one. Yeah, okay. Edit. And undo layer style. Oop. And edit. Undo sharpen edges. Okay, there we go. We're back to blurry again. So as you can see, there was quite a bit of difference there between the two, right? So now I'm going to apply the next type of sharpening. I'm not going to use sharpen more because that's just terrible. Smart sharpen is pretty good. And again, it's just taking its best, most educated approach to sharpening. Oh, wait a minute, I still have a layer there. Yes, I want to delete the layer. Okay. Okay, filter down to sharpen. Smart sharpen. Okay, we're way down there. I'm going to go up here to the ridge line. There we go. And so this is again just taking its best guess, but this is not too bad. I usually apply around 100 to 140% when I'm doing sharpening. This particular one, I never go over 1 pixel. If you do it at 0.9 pixels on the radius right here, that means it won't grab the next pixel to apply sharpening to. You don't want to do that because 2 pixels of sharpening, you start to see a wider white line. Reduce noise comes in handy. I always give it about 10%. Down here you've got remove, lens blur, Gaussian blur, or motion blur. They all have some effect. Gaussian blur would be like if you're shooting through an old window pane and you've got a little rippling. It'll take out some of that. Lens blur would be if you have a lens that's not maybe a high quality lens. It's going to get a little soft in the corners, that kind of stuff. It takes out a tiny amount of that. And motion blur is if your camera was moving a little bit when it shot the image. and it'll take out some of that. Again, it's not really dramatic, but it does do some of that. So I always have it set at lens blur, just in case there's any lens blur. It'll, tackle a little tiny bit of that. Okay, so we hit OK, and there's our sharpening. Let's zoom in a little bit, take a look, see how it looks. Oh, we're all the way in there. Okay. Well, it's really nothing, with any issues. I mean, I think we did overall a pretty good job on that, so that kind of works. Undo it, and then we'll go down to the better sharpening algorithm that Photoshop has, unsharp mask, and it applies a mask to all the areas that it's not going to apply sharpening to, and that kind of helps out. So we'll go to the same area. Again, I apply about 100 to 140%. Radius under a pixel threshold helps to make those white edges a little bit softer on the sharpening that it's applying. So I usually put a few levels of threshold there. Click OK. Let me have a drink of tea here. Okay, so as you can see, overall I think it looks pretty good. Again, that works pretty well. Because you have, several different ways to sharpen, you can try out each one if you're going to, really tweak an image a lot to get the highest quality as possible out of it. So let's undo this sharp mask and I'll show you how professionals do it. Okay, so when you're sharpening something and you're working in Photoshop, it's sharpening everything. It's sharpening the red layer, the green layer, the blue layer, and the lightness layer. So actually, you don't want to sharpen color. All you want to sharpen is the lightness because that's where the detail is. Color is just color data. It's not detail. So what you do is you do this. Go to Image, down to Mode, over to Lab Color. Then you go over to the Channels palette down here on the bottom right. See it right there? And you've got Lab Color, Lightness right below it. Click on that. Lightness, now you have only the density channel. There's no color information there, and it's not sharpening color, so it's not putting 4 layers of sharpening in your image. It's just doing that one layer where the brightness is. So that's the best place. I'm going to go to 100%. I'll zoom in a little bit. And then you select your unsharp mask now. Sharpen down to unsharp mask. And go back up to the ridge line there. There we go. And now, if you're doing it this way, you can actually apply a little bit more sharpening because it's not sharpening color noise, which is making it actually less sharp, or putting more layers of sharpening on top of each other. So I'm going to give it about 200% sharpening. And again, under 1 pixel, threshold 6 levels, that's fine. Click OK. Now you go back to Image, down to Mode, to RGB color, and put it at 100%. So that's literally the best sharpening job you can do on this particular image. So, and it works everywhere. It gives you nice sharpening across the entire frame. It's only grabbing contrast edges when it does it. So it's not sharpening layers or areas where there's like flat tones and things like that. It's only sharpening detail. And that's really the best way to sharpen. Remember though, the big pointer is sharpening happened when you took the picture. So if you don't have it sharp to begin with, you're not going to end up with a sharp picture at the end, right? Okay, so there you go. There's sharpening like a boss. We'll see you guys later on.